Joining us from London is Stephen King, Chief Global Economist at HSBC. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Stephen, in terms of what you make of what the IMF has said over the last couple of days and what's happening in Portugal and Greece, are we a step closer to having a resolution, or actually is there still a long and difficult road ahead?
There's still a long and difficult road ahead for the simple reason that we haven't yet dealt with the underlying problem of who actually pays the bill for this crisis. Is it the debtors in countries like Greece and Portugal, or is it the creditors in Germany, France, and indeed elsewhere in the world? And that also reveals another feature, which is that we still have uncertainties about exactly the political arrangements for Europe in the future. A lot of investors worry about the euro breaking up, but to avoid that, you probably need to have a much stronger fiscal pact than we have currently. And that stronger fiscal pact will probably take the form of an act of union of some sort or another. So the political uncertainties are still quite great, and because of that, I think there'll still be some financial market jitters in the months and years ahead.
Stephen, what do you make of the situation in Portugal? It seems now that we do have a prime minister who's likely to take place of José Sócrates, who wants to be very tough and who even wants to implement extra austerity measures. It seems a little bit of a risky business, given that, well, we're not growing at all in Portugal.
Well, the reality is, of course, that you need to deliver austerity if you've borrowed too much, and that's exactly what Portugal is doing. We're hoping, of course, in return to get some help from its European neighbours, and it also, I think, wants to differentiate itself from Greece, where, of course, there's been tremendous difficulties in delivering austerity. So if it's the case that the new government in Portugal can say, yes, we've actually done the right kinds of things, we've got a vote that supports the idea of further austerity, we'll get on with it, that will be hopeful to a certain degree. But I agree that ultimately, without any growth over the next 2 or 3 years, there'll still be question marks over how sustainable the fiscal position in Portugal is.
Now, what about Greece's possible exit from the Eurozone? I know it's been, branded as the worst possible solution by the ECB, but why not think of Greece actually being able to step out for a couple of months to get its finances back into order until, it's ready to go back in, instead of us pouring money into Greece without any real result?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by stepping out of the Eurozone. You mean introduce a new currency for a couple of months, or what does that mean? I mean, the difficulty here really is that any country that goes out of the Eurozone undermines the Eurozone itself, because the whole point of a single currency is that it's a single currency forever, not something which you choose from 1 month to the next. So the question is, if Greece is in the Eurozone, it must stay in the Eurozone. The issue is, how do you resolve Greece's problems?
And how do you resolve Greece's problems, Stephen? I mean, it seems that at the moment, we say that next year they won't be able to come back on the markets. This was what we were hoping for just 7-8 months ago. Is there a cutoff point where we say, right, if it can't stand on its own 2 feet by 2013, then we have to pull the plug?
Well, the question here really is, again, this issue about whether it's just the debtors that take the cost of the adjustment, or whether the creditors also have to take some of the cost as well. This comes back to the question of how much of a restructuring may eventually take place, whether there's going to be restructuring at all, what is the role of the German and the French taxpayer, what is the role of the financial institutions. Someone at some point has to pay for this, and all we're seeing at the moment is a kind of pass the parcel or a musical chairs story where no one actually is admitting that they have to pay for it, but ultimately there is a cost to be borne by somebody.
Now, many top UK economists say that what George Osborne is doing at the moment isn't working because we're seeing very slow and fragile growth. Where do you stand on this austerity versus, growth debate?
Well, I think it was 50 economists who wrote this letter. They didn't ask me, so I'm very disappointed that I'm not a top economist. But the reality is that go back to 1981, at the time of the budget back then, 364 economists, including, by the way, Mervyn King, wrote to the Times complaining about the degree of government austerity. As it turned out, that was the bottom for the UK economic cycle at the time, and everything then began to improve thereafter. The problem really is this, that it's all very well saying it'd be nice to have a plan B, but no one's really said exactly what that plan B actually is. The reality is that the UK, like other nations, has to cope with the fact that commodity prices are relatively high. It has to cope with the fact that it's borrowed too much in the past. It needs to have some degree of austerity. That's just reality, I'm afraid.